Hi, I'm Marisa Thompson. I am the Extension Urban Horticulture Specialist for NMSU Cooperative Extension Service, and I'm talking today about planting trees. So I've made this quick guide. Let's get right into it. I write a weekly gardening column, and this column is available online on a blog, and so I've included the link here. If you are interested in other tree issues, I will be posting, and I have posted them here, issues and topics including planting, irrigation, salt burn, southwest injury, staking. Staking is a big no-no for me. I'm anti-staking. I call it misstaking. So we are going to cover many of these topics here, but for more information, you can go find more links in my blog posts. Okay, so I've gotten this information for planting a tree from this website that's excellent. It's treesaregood.org, and they have all kinds of resources for helping trees survive better in our urban climates. So let's get into it. Number one, you're going to want to locate all underground utilities prior to digging, and also think about the overhead. If you've got something overhead that's going to be interrupting your tree growth, go ahead and pick either a smaller tree or put the tree in a position that is not going to have to compete with something else that's already there. So the motto for arborists around the world is right tree, right place. Really, if we pick the right species of tree for our climate and for our area, and we pick the right place for the tree, then they're going to do so much better, and we'll have to prune less because we won't have so much a problem with plant size. So right tree, right place. The first thing to do is to identify the trunk flare. Now, I'm assuming in this presentation we're talking about container planting, so you might have a 1-gallon tree, a 5-gallon, a 20-gallon tree, and so you want to find that trunk flare. That's that point, and I have it drawn here. The trunk flare is where the trunk expands right here at the base of the tree where it meets the soil. Sometimes this is also called the root flare. This point, the flare, should be partially visible after the tree has been planted. So we need to find it beforehand. I used to suggest that if you have a tree in a container and you are getting ready to plant it, that you mark that line where the soil meets the trunk, so that later, once it's planted, that line, you can check to be sure that that line, either with a piece of tape or with marker, is in exactly the same spot. But in the nursery, a lot of times soil gets added to the container because some soil has been falling out of the bottom continually. And so in order to refill it, they might add soil to the top of the container, which means that that root flare might be hidden. So you may have to excavate a little bit and find it. It's very important. Dig a shallow but broad planting hole. Holes should be 2 to 3 times wider than the root ball, but only as deep as the root ball. So once you've found the flare, if your pot was originally this tall, but the trunk flare is here, that means you're only having to dig a hole that's this deep. That's very shallow, but of course you want it to be a little bit wider. So the reason for that is that when if we dig the hole too deep, then over time, the tree is either it's immediately planted that way, or even if you were to put some soil back in, that soil underneath settles over time and it becomes too deep. So that is a very common problem, and we need to do a better job of planting to avoid it. Okay, remove the container or cut away the wire basket. If there's burlap, anything that is restricting the root, you have to remove that entirely. So you're going to inspect the container root ball at this time for circling roots. Straighten, cut, or remove any circling roots. The fact is that circling roots never self-correct. So that means that sure, maybe for a couple of years the tree does great and the roots are not a problem, but over time, as those roots get fatter and fatter, they may start to strangle your tree or strangle themselves and restrict water movement and sugars moving through the plant, and that will kill them. So you can, at the nursery, ask to go ahead and look at the roots and be very gentle, of course, but if you see that there is a big circling root mass, pick a different tree. That's not the best specimen. So you're going to remove the container wrappings, wires, and ties, and look at the root ball. Place the tree at the proper height. Take care to dig the hole to the proper depth and no more. If the tree is planted too deep, new roots will have difficulty developing because of lack of oxygen. So you're setting the root ball on firmly packed soil to prevent settling. And I even recommend going back, say a month or two later, go back and look again to be sure that that didn't settle. Sometimes the soil that's kind of built up as a berm here starts to fill in, and that can make the plant also be planted too deep. Okay, part 2. So we remove the container, we set the ball on firmly packed soil. Now we want to straighten the tree in the hole. Before you backfill it, have someone view the tree from several directions to confirm it's straight. So you need a couple perspectives on that. Fill the hole gently but firmly. Pack soil around the base of the root ball to stabilize it. Fill the remainder of the hole, firmly packing the soil to eliminate air pockets that may dry out roots. Further reduce air pockets by watering periodically while you're backfilling. Avoid fertilization at the time of planting. I would say don't just avoid it, just don't fertilize at all. No root stimulator, no fertilization at all. That's something that was old school. People used to recommend it. It's no longer recommended. And there's several reasons for that, but this is a quick video, so we're just giving the basics. So you are going to fill the hole using the same dirt that you brought out. No soil amendments are recommended. No mulch, no sand, no compost in the hole, nothing like that. The same native soil that you took out goes right back in the hole. Stake the tree if necessary. Studies have shown that trees establish more quickly and develop stronger trunk and root systems if they're not staked at the time of planting. So if you do have to stake, use 2 opposing flexible ties when it's necessary. Ties should be placed on the lower half, and I would say not even the lower half, but down the lower third of the tree to allow for trunk movement. So after your tree is staked, first of all, please try not staking. If you have to stake, after the tree is staked, the top of the tree, like here's my fiddle leaf fig here, needs to be able to really wiggle freely with the wind, and that gives the signals to the plant to encourage those lateral roots that we really want. Mulch the base of the tree, yay for mulch. So 2 to 4 inch thick layer of mulch is what's normally recommended. Mulch is organic matter spread around the base of a tree to hold moisture, moderate soil temperature extremes, reduce grass and weed competition. And so there's more information if you were to click this link on the treesaregood.org, but we're going to cover more on mulching too. So mulch is excellent, and we want to mulch around the base of the tree. Now, let's see what's next. We do want, for now, to keep the mulch back 1 to 2 inches so that the mulch isn't hiding how deep, so that the mulch isn't hiding that flare. You want to be able to see the flare from across the yard. And if the mulch is coming right up against it, you may have a tree that's planted too deep, or you might just have mulch that's too deep. So pull the mulch just back so that you can see that trunk flare. Okay, follow-up care. Keep the soil moist but not waterlogged. So newly planted trees need to be watered at least once a week, barring rain. Of course, not usually, our rain is not enough to moisturize that entire root zone and that root ball. So in hot, windy weather, you want to water more frequently. So before you water, I would say go out and stick your finger in the soil, just right around here. Here's my pointer, right around here, and confirm that it's dry enough and that it needs water again. So you want the soil to dry out so that air can get down into the roots, and air is within the soil particles. If you have it too waterlogged, then oxygen can't reach the roots. Okay, more on trunk flare. So here's my sister in Seattle, and she's with these incredible huge trees. You can see here that you can kind of see this trunk flare, but it's not as prominent. So on some species, it's not as noticeable, but it's still there. So these, especially on conifers, it's not as easy to define. But this is a photo from that I Googled showing that in mature trees, sure enough, you see that trunk flare. And Denise Britton of the Britton Fund, it's a tree nonprofit group in California, says you should be able to see the topmost root just barely at the soil surface just after you plant. So that means that you're going to be able to barely see that top root right there at the surface, and that's how you know that you haven't planted too deep. This again, is a picture of what it looks like if it's planted too deep. It's called pole planting. I went ahead and got a couple more pictures. So I got these from the Garden Professors blog. It's gardenprofessors.com. These are pictures on the left of a lilac that's planted too deeply. And then on the right, a pine tree that's planted too deeply. So you can see that pole in the ground kind of look. Now, again, maybe for the first couple of years, this won't be a problem, but over time, it can kill trees and does kill trees in our cities. So here's two more examples. The magnolia tree under stress on the left from being buried too deeply. And then on the right, we have a magnolia tree that's thriving right next to it, where the root flare is clearly visible. Now, I do want to add a note here that magnolia trees are not recommended for planting in New Mexico. Okay, here's another image. This one is from the DallasNews.com, and this is showing someone loosening excess soil with a trowel from a dwarf Japanese maple that's been planted, that has been too deeply packed into a container. So this is the case. This is not your root flare. These are lateral roots that are forming to try to barely survive, but the root, once you expose that root flare, those first big primary roots, that's where the flare begins. So you're gonna have to gently pull this away, this material, and they're using a trowel here. You can also use your fingers to pull that away and expose that lower actual root flare. Again, Japanese maples are not recommended for planting in New Mexico. They're gonna struggle their entire lives. So here we are with this, what it looks like when you have a deep planting. Don't do that. But I do want to talk about mulch. So here's some crocus blossoms that were blooming at the Los Lunas Ag Science Center where I work here for New Mexico State University. It's a research farm. And this picture I love because the flowers are pretty, but the mulch is really good looking. Applied correctly, mulches offer the following benefits. Inhibit weed germination and growth. Hold soil moisture, prevent water and wind erosion, prevent surface soil crusting, moderate soil temperature fluctuations, help protect plant roots from winter cold, and prevent frost heaving, which does happen here too when the soil freezes and starts heaving in winter. Organic mulches, which doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't mean certified organic, it means plant tissue that once was. So it could be leaf litter, bark, shredded bark, bark chunks, shredded wood chips, pine straw, pine needles, yep, all these things. So organic mulches can provide much needed nutrients as they break down over time and add to the soil. Organic mulches can feed beneficial soil biota. Organic mulches applied over a period of years can increase organic matter and improve the soil texture. The best thing you can do for your soil is to have roots growing in it, and the best way to support roots is to have mulch that is supplying all these benefits. Organic mulches applied over a period of years can enhance the soil's ability to store plant nutrients. So lots of reasons that mulches benefit our soils and therefore our trees. So again, we're going to keep the mulch just barely away from the trunk. I do want to touch on two other issues, one other issue, and that is something that we need to protect our trees from that is something that's not commonly done. So have you ever seen before where the trunks are painted white? And in this example, this is a peach tree, a young peach tree. I would argue that this white painting could go all the way up in the limbs. On these mature trees, it's not as big as of an issue, but this is protecting the trees from what we call southwest injury. It's also called Sunscald. So on this tree, even though the tree is planted too deeply and it looks like it's having some problems at the base here, this is an ash tree in Belen. On the northeast side of the trunk looks relatively normal, but the southwest side of the trunk looks like this. Now, I challenge you to go out into your community and look at the northeast versus southwest sides of park trees, and you will see images that are similar to this. So what happens is in the winter time, when we have really cold nights and really warm days, say in February, the afternoon sun is very warm and it's hitting the southwest side of the trunk. If temperatures drop that night, which they often do, they can cause those cells to rupture, because with the heat warming up this side of the trunk, the sap in the tree has started to run, but the cold temperatures that night cause those cells to break, and we have all kinds of different types of lesions that form on this southwest side of the trunk, and it can severely hinder the tree's ability to survive. Here's another example from Albuquerque. This is a crab apple. There's other issues here, like this black plastic is being removed now because it's been very difficult for the tree to access water and oxygen with that plastic down underneath the rock. But also, so we're looking at this really dark trunk, this dark bark on the northeast side, but on the southwest side of the trunk, this is how it looks. So in order to protect our trees, you could either paint the trunk and some of those lower branches in the winter when the trees are dormant and leaves have fallen. You can paint using a 50-50 mix of white latex paint with water, or you can make a chalky mixture of and paint like kind of a chalk material. You can also, there are different kinds of trunk wraps that are material that are not too closely fitted but can spiral around and really protect the trunk from that southwest sun in the afternoons, and are great for protecting this from happening to our trees. So thank you very much. I'm Marisa Thompson with NMSU Extension, and this is how you can find me on the blog. You can find me and my colleagues' programs on social media. And also you can find your local county extension office. You can either Google Sierra County NMSU, or you can go to this website, aces.nmsu.edu/county, to find your county extension agent. So I'm saying thanks, but I really do mean it. Thank you for watching the entirety of this video, and I hope to be able to provide a bunch more soon.